Hello, once again, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Terminal Vocation. I'm your host, Deacon Mark.
And I'm Erin.
And we're excited that you're back for this conversation with us. Today, we're concluding our series of the top 5 challenges of relationships as a sort of review. We talked about money, sex, kids, family of origin. Tonight, we're going to touch on religion and politics.
All the hot button stuff.
All the hot button stuff. So we've gotten through a lot of that, but before we get into that, how are things going? How's your week?
My week's good. I started reading just crime novels that I love. So it's like a bestseller, nothing classic, nothing middle school. I'm reading a book called God of the Woods, just a camp murder thriller kind of thing. It's great.
Right. The cliched like summer read, beach read kind of brain candy.
Makes me so happy.
You know, you're done with your well-read mom club, and so now you can just kind of read stuff that's just for fun. Yes. That's nice.
Yes.
That's nice to jump into.
What about you?
Yeah, well, we've been going to a lot of, grad parties and stuff. We got friends and folks whose kids are graduating and moving on. So that's been, fun to wish them well. There was one we went to the other night, like, they had a DJ and all the kids are out there dancing the whole time.
Virginia Reel made an appearance.
That group of kids, like, they love these line dances and stuff, but they always like pull that in.
Yeah. They like the modern line dances as well, but they pull the old.
But they do that old one, yeah.
Yeah.
And
great.
I never really liked it. I grew up with we would go visit my grandparents on my dad's side, and they didn't do what grandparents do, which is to kind of set their life aside and orient that week around the grandkids.
Sure.
It's just the grandkids went to do whatever grandma and grandpa normally do during the week. And sometimes that's okay, and some of the things were kind of fun, but there was always one night of the week that they got dressed up in their square dancing outfit.
Love
and
it.
We went and watched all the old people square dancing. And I suppose, like, we could have gone and learned it, like my sister and I, but I don't think I was really too keen on dancing with my sister.
Yes, right.
And I don't really think I was that keen on dancing at all. In gym class, we would have to do square dancing at gym class.
Yes.
And so, like, I never wanted to think of it as something I would go do on vacation. So, anyway, when I see them doing the Virginia Reel, it always surprises me that they would be so into doing something like that.
But they loved it. All the dancing was great.
But it was
a lot of church clap.
Yeah, a lot of church clap. Yeah. And then, of course, watching the World Cup has been fun.
That has been very fun.
Watching a couple of those games. USA dominated Paraguay, which was exciting.
Yeah, that was good.
But that kind of leads me into our This Just In topic. So the difference between these two stories that have come out. So the first is, I'm trying to remember the order of these two games, but I was sort of reading about both of these today. So Tunisia lost their first game to Sweden 5-1 and promptly sacked their coach, who had only been with them since January. So he was in 4 of their sort of friendlies leading up to the World Cup. So he hasn't been with the team for that long to have really even had a chance to put his thumbprint on the team. I found this a bit surprising also because Tunisia is not expected to make it past the group stage. They've never gotten out of the group stage, and nobody is predicting this to be their year.
Right.
So the expectations really weren't that high for Tunisia to begin with. So again, they lost 5-1. That's devastating. That's a big loss. Another team, however, lost worse. Curacao. Now, this is the first time they've ever been in the World Cup. Small island nation of 150, maybe even 120,000 people.
Wow.
Are playing in a field in Houston, which has a population of like 2.7 million. So they're playing in this city that is larger than their entire country.
Yeah.
They lost 7-1 to Germany.
Okay.
But the Curacao faithful, when they scored their first ever World Cup goal, had no designs on beating Germany. but just the fact that they even got on the board and
We're
didn't
just-
get shut out.
We're just happy to be
They were
here.
ecstatic.
Yeah.
Ecstatic. And it's just so fun to watch a team, like when you watch sports movies, like when a team is just doing their best. And I know like I love sports. I love the drama. I love people that are great at what they do. But there is something to just the human accomplishment of just surpassing your own expectations.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit from a family perspective about expectations, resiliency, and all those things. Because I think when we raise kids have this expectation whenever they take on something new that they're going to be awesome.
Yeah, if they start basketball, they're the next LeBron.
Right. And so when suddenly they realize, oh, it's hard to dribble while I'm walking, or to switch hands and dribble with my other hand, or to make more than one free throw out of 100.
Yeah.
So suddenly, Mom, Dad, I want to quit.
Right. I know it's so true. And I think sometimes we, including myself, are surprised by the amount of effort something that looks so relatively easy takes, that there's so many pieces that have to come together for those kids to do it. And I think, that is the time to find the way to at least, we mentioned this before in an episode, of committing to the whole set of lessons. So fine, maybe you never have to touch a basketball again, but we have signed up.
We paid for this season.
And we're doing this many. Yeah, so at least that. I do think there's something. I was talking to our strings teacher today, and she's a professional violinist. And she did basically just forced her kids all the way along to always play a stringed instrument. It was a little different than our philosophy of you have to finish what you started. Maybe we don't do it again. But her kids have both come back to her and said, thank goodness you did that. Her daughter, I think, is a music instructor. But there's something to balancing those expectations to say this is real work, and it's not exciting work. It's scales over and over again. It's dribbling the ball. It's passing with your left hand. Like, it's all the foundational stuff that just gets repeated thousands and thousands of times.
And that there's like a statistic out there, cliche, we'd call it, whatever, but that it takes 10,000 hours of doing something to become proficient or expert at it. And there's very few things that probably any of us reach in our life that goes up to that amount of time. Like I don't know how many things that I could say I've spent 10,000 hours doing. I've done things for multiple years. Like I've even played guitar now for probably 35 years. Even over 35 years, I've not spent anywhere near 10,000 hours doing it, because there was times in my life where I practiced harder than others, but I never put hours into scales and all those other things. I sort of did enough to learn the things that I wanted to do with it, but I would never say that I'm an expert. So other than probably our jobs, I don't know how many other things we do that we're that expert. Sleeping, I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah, you don't have any trouble sleeping. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think. Probably, maybe writing for me. Writing. It sounds stupid to say it. Reading, does it count? I don't know. I've read a lot.
No, I think that does. I mean, if you talk to people who read, and because you, especially with your book club, you read a lot of difficult literature, which is a different kind of. I mean, you even opened up talking about, okay, summer, and you're giving yourself a little break. Yeah. But the break isn't that you're not reading.
It's I'm downshiftting to crime novels.
Downshiftting to crime novels, but throughout the year you read really hard books, and I think people say if you want to read hard books,
you've got to
read hard books, and that develops that muscle.
Okay, well that's the muscle I've developed.
Good job.
Thanks.
My next thing that I have to develop 10,000 hours in is exercise.
You took a body
I should have
pump.
mentioned this at the top. I took this body pump class yesterday, and my legs and my core are absolutely like going downstairs with my body weight coming down on my legs all day. Why did I do that? Oh, right, because I should and I need to.
You're ripping those muscles apart and building new ones. It's good.
I deplore the thought of ever doing 10,000 hours of it, but I will do what needs to be done to
Good for you.
become better than I am today. So, so I just think the idea of, firing the coach versus, celebrating, the expectation idea. So we've touched a little bit on the resiliency side of that. Mm-hmm. But also that conversation with your kids before they start something of what's going to be involved.
Setting expectations.
And setting those expectations. Because I think the other thing is, we were talking about this earlier about the summer swim coach.
Oh, he was great.
That we had. And he was very quick and early in the season to point out, your kids are not going to be Michael Phelps.
He would send this email home that said, 20 reasons why your child will not be an Olympic athlete from Summer Swim League, which was great. We were not looking for that. But yeah, he was setting parent expectations.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And that's not to say he couldn't have great swimmers that come out of that. It's not to say he wasn't willing to help anybody who had potential beyond Summer Swim League.
Yeah.
But it was just, when we look at the statistics, we have to set up our kids with some idea of what's possible versus what's probable. And I think one of the parts of that is saying the people that are doing this, brass ring kind of, professional, whatever, if that's what you want, then you have to be resilient and have fortitude in doing this. And you need to be doing more than the bare minimum. So when they're telling you, we're practicing twice a week and having a game, just putting in those couple hours isn't going to get you to professional level. You got to come home every night and dribble, and
what are the hours?
So setting those expectations for them and saying, if that's what you want, we can help you and support you. But that's
what it takes.
That's the level of effort that it takes.
And for parents too, every kid is not good at everything they try, nor should they be.
And then setting our own expectations, right? That okay, that's not my kid's goal,
right?
To be that, so I don't need them to be that in order for me to live through them, right? That dad or mom that lives vicariously through their kid is, it's not good for the kid either, right? So
sometimes being happy that you placed, in the swim meet, or like Curacao, right? Happy to have got on the scoreboard.
Happy to have gotten on the scoreboard, right? And there was another thing that I was listening to. Some people were like, why are they even here? Nobody wants to see a 7-1 match. Well, somebody did.
Yeah.
It was the folks that got the one really wanted to see that match.
The team, yeah.
There's probably a lot of other people too who are kind of rooting for them from an underdog story perspective, and then. How does Curacao as a nation ever become a better team if they don't get some of the notoriety, the income? There's some kid who's sitting in Curacao this month watching his team and his country's uniforms running across that pitch and going to say, I want to do that.
Right.
So...
Yeah, that's where good movies are made. Miracle.
Right, Miracle. Yeah.
Hoosiers.
So... Anyway, we're excited about the World Cup. We're excited to watch all the teams, big and small. And hey, rooting for Tunisia. They've got 2 more games in the group stage, and they've got a new interim coach who's going to be leading them out there.
Yeah.
So, wish them well. That's going to be a trying thing for those players too, right? Mm-hmm. So, all right. Well, we've put off the inevitable now. We've got to touch on religion and politics. So
let's do it.
We're going to jump into this last challenge of these top 5 challenges. And so growing up, I know there was always this adage that I had heard that religion and politics are 2 things you don't talk about in polite company. And I think for me that kind of held true most of my life, and probably up until kind of the advent of social media, I kind of saw that as the case. But it wasn't the case all over. I mean, we wouldn't have as many people from our generation who are career politicians if they hadn't been in activist families or young Democrats or young Republicans.
Well, and I think that was a real difference in my family, because my family were very much, very involved in, I wouldn't say involved in politics, involved in grassroots efforts about politics. So a lot of protest marches and carrying signs and things like that. So for us, politics was dinner table conversation, which I didn't mind when we were a family at home. It was hard sometimes when we went to extended families, because I think my parents had very different views than other people, so sometimes it got uncomfortable. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that is the etiquette, or was the etiquette. I think our family just kind of bucked that a little bit.
When it comes to a relationship, though, I think it's something that we have to start talking about a little bit sooner, because even though in polite company maybe we don't talk about these topics all the time, when you start developing a relationship with somebody, these are things that become very core to who we are. They're the things we feel probably the deepest and most passionate about. And so if we don't start to figure out how well we mesh with that other person, then that can be trouble. You know, we have to avoid that being a taboo subject. We have to make it something that's okay to talk about. And so couples should be talking about their views on these matters, right? They should be figuring out, do we agree here? Do we agree there? And not just doing it overly broadly, but kind of figuring out, okay, well, if we don't agree exactly on this, is there still some common area within that?
Well, and I think some of it too is learning how to be a good listener and a good speaker, so that you can disagree on topics, see things differently. I mean, and still, and not want to strangle the other person, you know, basically, right? Like, I don't know that it's necessary that you line up in lockstep on every political issue, but you have the ability to talk about it. And like you said, sort of find the common ground.
Yeah.
Find ways to just say, yeah, I guess I see it differently, and understand that person is still a good person just because they don't line up with politics. Religion, I'm going to say, is a little asterisk there. We can chat more about that. Yeah, no,
later. And let's dive into that. I mean, we lump these two together because they are kind of things that are deeply held beliefs, and so they're similar in that way. But there is a difference in kind, right, or a certain objective difference between them, especially if we talk about faith. And so let's start there.
Okay.
Because I think faith is somewhere where agreement is going to be more important for people, or at least it's going to be more important for people of faith, right? So probably a lot of you listening, probably people of faith, if you've come to this through, knowing us, or, other Catholic circles, then, we've mentioned that we're sort of unabashedly Catholic. And I think for each of us at some point in our early relationships or previous relationships, we came to some kind of realization that the person we were with was not quite living out their faith the way that we were. And we had made a determination that that was something that was important to us.
Sure.
So, in I think both of our cases, we were dating someone who, I was dating someone who was Catholic, but we had met in CCM, but they weren't going to church all the time, or certainly not with us, or not getting involved with anything. And having been involved in CCM, I thought that was kind of where the future lied. For me, a sincerely held belief needed to be supported by somebody that I was going to spend my life with.
I think of the two of these topics, of course, religion is more important, in just informing us and trying to find somebody who shares your beliefs. I guess I think that's ideal, but certainly we know families, couples, that's not the case, and they're very successful. I think of the couples that we know, there's a deeply held respect for the other person's beliefs, and there's communal aspects to both churches, and in the instances I can think of, that they both go work at each other's churches and help out and do service projects together and things like that.
Yeah, like my grandparents, for example, my grandfather was Catholic, my grandmother was Presbyterian. They were both very active, and not just active in their own churches, but active in each other's churches. Like they supported the other one's faith. So I think it became something that still had this potential to still be family oriented, right? Because they weren't just putting up this sort of firewall between the two and saying, you go there, I go here. They were lifting up what the other one was doing. And I think that where this becomes really important for spouses is not just that we're supporting each other in faith, but that also influences how much we're able to pass it on.
Sure.
Right? So if the kids see, well, you say this is important, but mom doesn't do it or dad doesn't do it, then that's hard to understand. Right?
Yeah, kids look so much more at our actions than our words. Absolutely.
Right. And so, yeah, I think as a Catholic, in the old Baltimore Catechism, right? If you were to ask Catholics of a certain generation what is the meaning of life, they'd quote the Baltimore Catechism, right? To know, love, and serve God in this life so that we can be with him in the next. So if we want that, then we want someone who's going to provide mutual help and is going to lead us towards that. And so I think you're right. Like if you're trying to live out some of those things, then the degree to which the other person on the other side of the bed is living out that same thing, the easier it is for them to kind of hold you accountable in a good way, to become responsible for your salvation. Okay, but what about, so if we want to have some commonality, but like we were saying, there might be some different ways that expresses itself. So what about you get two people who are in a relationship and everything's going great. I found this great Catholic girl. I found this, oh, but she doesn't say the rosary every day. He takes communion in the hand. We got to have, I think, a little bit of grace in terms of saying, gosh, if I've found somebody that is, sharing really the core of what I believe, but they're expressing it in a way that is still a legitimate expression of that faith, then I might need to lighten up a little bit.
Yeah, I think you can have this image of who the person is that you should marry, and sometimes it's a carbon copy of yourself, but that it really doesn't work well because there's already one of you. Two of you is a lot. In that instance. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it in this way, and this relates to our next discussion on politics, but this division that we occasionally see on sort of these, I would say, scrupulous lines like this, I feel like is influenced in some way by our political culture that is so insidious in terms of dividing people. And I don't know, maybe it's always been. I mean, maybe that's, maybe in our parents' generation or grandparents' generation, there were things like that as well. I don't think so. I mean, but I think that willingness it almost seems like you're looking for an excuse if this person doesn't pray just like you. I feel like there's something going on with you.
Yeah, I do think, just like there are rose-colored glasses about things that are obviously not right about a person. Sometimes maybe we have sort of a mud-colored glasses about somebody if we're just looking for an excuse for them to not be right. Maybe because we're scared of a commitment to them. Sure. Maybe because, whatever sort of mistaken image of marriage and perfection that we had built up in our minds. It's maybe not reasonable. Again, that idea of expectations.
Right.
Like if we overhype our own expectations. In our own marriage, I think there's been instances where each of us has kind of the complementarity or the difference that we've had in our own expression of our faith has helped to pull the other one along. Right? There's been different times. We talked, in episode 1 about going to Puerto Vallarta, and you wanted to buy these icons or images or other things to have around the house. And I teased you about it. I still tease you about it because it's funny. But if you were to look around our house, we do have something in each room that is kind of wherever we are in the house, we can look and see some sort of reminder of our faith to draw our thoughts back to God. And I think that's a good thing where that kind of crept in through a way that you expressed the faith that I wasn't on board with, and became something where I was like, that's a good that I want in my home, in my family.
I also found better art. than some of the
That's true.
shiny. I was attracted to the shiny art.
We did compromise, and it was like a yes, but not that.
Right. Yeah, I think learning, I mean, ideally, I think you do that in marriage in many things, but specifically in faith, like somebody has a devotion that they really like, you try it out, or a saint that they often ask for prayers, and you're like, oh, I hadn't thought about, Saint Sebastian or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there are, you're living so intimately in a family that hopefully we're all influenced by everybody's, including children's, expressions of Catholicism to try something new. Doesn't mean you keep it, or maybe you keep it for a period, or, that type of thing. It's good. So I think we kind of talked about religion just in terms of, both of those things, right? That, what should matter, and what shouldn't matter. And so just making sure that we've got, a healthy balance there with those things. Let's talk about politics a little bit and kind of where there's similarities and where there's differences. Yeah.
Because it is... there's a danger of equating the two, or aligning the two too closely together. And, just sort of off the bat, I would say, like, most priests that you would talk to, most bishops you would talk to, I think would say, we should be politically homeless, right? Like, there's not a single political party that is going to meet all the needs or all the things that we look for in terms of policy and that sort of thing, and so that's certainly something to be on guard against. If we are people of faith, we should kind of hold that up as the standard.
Hold the faith up.
Hold the faith up as the standard, right?
Versus a political party
a political party. Yeah. But I think we are going to see, and as we start talking, there's going to be certain religious issues that are going to touch really closely to a lot of those political views. And so that's where I think they become very sensitive and become challenges. In
a marriage, you're saying that because they're closely held beliefs in a faith, it's going to bleed over into the political arena, even though I would say the religion is the more important, but it you have to live it out. And that's kind of where the religion, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's one area where, they become a challenge. Now, there's certainly other political beliefs that I think religious people would say there's something about which reasonable people can disagree. Mm-hmm. But, one person might still have a very strong opinion about it. I don't, know what examples are. Maybe something like being a vegan, like to the extent that that's a... political belief or anything like that, so then you get into, questions about animals and eating them. And, well, we can have arguments about that, but it's not based on faith. It's just something, but it's still something about that one person might feel very strong.
Of course.
So, but let's not ignore the biggest topic, I think, especially for Catholics, that comes up is abortion. And I think is that spillover topic, or that Venn diagram kind of topic between politics and religion that comes up, and I think here it could be a very difficult thing if two people disagreed wildly on that topic because of its overlap with the faith component. It could become very easily a non-negotiable.
Sure, and it's certainly a hot button political issue, but then you have it exactly right, crossing with that deeply held moral belief.
Yeah. But it is possible here as well that like two people could agree in the main, like we talked about religious and just kind of the different ways of expressing a religious belief. Well, you could have two people who are both, pro-life, anti-abortion, but they might have different degrees of how they act on that. One person could be I go every Saturday to pray outside, this abortion clinic. And the person's like, I'm not comfortable with that. I'll pray for it. I'll, vote against it, etc. But I'm not comfortable doing that publicly.
Yeah, different expression.
And that's still support of the issue without...
Yes.
You know,
And would be something, if you were dating somebody like that, I would say that's not something to get hung up on, right? Like, you're both on the same page.
You're both on the
It's
same side.
And you're both actually, one's praying privately and one's praying publicly. Like, that's great. What I think interesting for us personally, I was a convert to the faith, and then met you after I had converted, and was still very much in the process of believed what the Catholic Church taught, but trying to change from a life that was really 180 degrees different. Things took time for me to bring my political views around. And so morally, I could understand that issue of abortion, and could feel that it was a wrong thing to do. But then looking at it on a political spectrum, I think that was a challenge for me to say, but how do you legislate something like that? Like, what's fair in that regard? Especially just given my upbringing in a political family that held, pro-choice positions. And so I think for me, it took, I would say, a couple years, maybe 2 years, where our views came more in alignment. Again, I agreed with you morally.
Yeah.
But I remember you at one point, I remember you saying, I'm frustrated. Like, I know what the church teaches is right. I'm praying to get there. And I don't understand how this plays out on the political platform, and you had said, probably the best thing you can do is just pray that abortion is unnecessary, and just ask God for that prayer. Because that was something you were, you were saying that's something that I could be comfortable praying, and then trying to sort out all that individual political party stuff was a lot. And just, I think over time, that settled down for me. And I, began to see how voting and how certain institutions had, incorrect ideas. Anyway, that's a whole nother can of worms. But I think that was one of those issues that I don't actually even remember us arguing about it, because we were pretty much on the same page. It was just, how do I learn to reconcile this for the whole country versus just for me, for Aaron personally?
Yeah, I think any of the arguments were just about the importance of it from, sort of a legislative, judicial, policy side of it. What should be done. I think, our parents were all sort of that Kennedy, first Catholic politician, first Catholic president, and others like him that came after with the personally opposed but politically neutral, or those sorts of platitudes that made them more electable. But I think kind of seeped into some of the Catholic consciousness about it. And so it was sort of natural that would be something that someone would wrestle with.
I think it also, that specific example for us points to that need to allow people room to grow into their positions politically, and also from a religious perspective. I mean, it's a fine line between, I can date this person who doesn't have my religious beliefs because I'm hoping that she'll change, and that's never a good idea, because people, for the most part, don't change. Right. But recognizing potential, or recognizing, okay, we can talk about these issues, and then seeing that play out over time. I think we're both very different people from the people that we were when we married, in some ways. In other ways, we're very much the same.
Yeah, I think there is, just that. And actually, one of the things I was going to talk about politics in terms of what shouldn't matter, is kind of these things that are not as core. We're just getting overly ideologue-like in our politics. I think one of the things we see a lot on social media, in political discourse, in kind of a polarization of talking points on either side of the spectrum, is just his way of othering people, who maybe we agree with, 80-90% of what they do,
yes.
Or maybe we actually have the same goals, which is a better society, but we just have a different opinion about how to get there. And I think both of us have talked about remembering a time when it seemed like there was a lot more of the my distinguished colleague this, or stories of, two congressmen from opposite sides of the aisle who would fight tooth and nail and then go out and have drinks at the end of the day. Like,
Right.
I feel like we don't hear those stories. Maybe they still exist. Maybe they, still exist within the walls of that, but they don't talk about them as much. But not letting that enter our relationships, of not othering somebody, primarily because we shouldn't do it to anybody, not just someone that we're in a relationship with, but really we should have that kind of charity for anybody.
I mean, we're all made in the image and likeness of God, right? So even the people that hold the opposite political belief from me,
right,
shockingly, are made in the image and likeness of God.
Right.
Right. So, no, I think that understanding and trying to accept people where they are and just meet them as people, if we're so divided along political lines, it does no one any good. And how could you ever have any kind of a deeper conversation to possibly evangelize or show people how great your faith is if you're constantly keep them at arm's length because they're, this group that, insert name calling right there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a tremendous, it's a tremendous loss for society. If you're looking for somebody, it's a tremendous loss of half of the dating pool. So
true.
If you're looking for somebody,
Statistics.
Get off your soapbox.
Right.
There's more people out there, and if you're willing to just be a little bit more charitable and find out what's motivating some of the things they believe, with a little bit of charity, then maybe you have a chance of realizing that they're a good person.
Yeah.
Maybe even convincing them, of some of the arguments on the other side. Like I said, there's going to be some things that are very tied into our faith, and there might be some things within politics like, okay, well, I maybe can't date somebody who believes that, but I could treat them better.
Amen. Wouldn't that be nice?
Right. And then if I treat them better, I might actually just look like a more attractive person.
It's working all around.
Somebody who does share more of those beliefs is more likely to say, "Oh yeah, I'll go out with that person."
Honestly, just more conversation and dialogue and arguing in the theoretical sense of arguing as opposed to name calling,
sort of the,
discussion.
The ancient dialectical sense of argument.
Yes,
that would be a good thing. Very good thing. So I think we've sufficiently covered religion and politics, as comfortable or uncomfortable as that may have been. Well, if you have any ideas or topics you'd like to hear us talk about, send them to terminalvocation@gmail.com. You've been listening to Terminal Vocation, of OFAM production. I'm Deacon Mark, along with my wife and co-host Aaron. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week.
See ya.